Nifty Sensex trade near day's low ahead of key FOMC meeting outcome tonight. Nifty trades near 20,800, whereas Sensex slips over 350 points. Broader markets outperform benchmarks.
IT stocks are the worst performers in trade. All constituents of the IT index trade in the red. TCS and Infosys are a drag on the benchmarks.
Stationery maker DOMS Industries IPO is oversubscribed on day one. Nexus Ventures bagged India Shelter Finance Corporation's IPO too is open today. Both companies have a total offer size of 1,200 crore rupees.
Morgan Stanley is very bullish on India, expects political continuity in 2024 general elections and projects a 14% upside to the Sensex from this point.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Market IQ, a show where we'll get you all the national, global and stock market updates at noon. Now, before we get into the news and updates, let's take a look at the markets and how they're faring today. Alex, markets are in the red today, but what exactly is buzzing?
Yeah, in fact, let's take a look at the benchmark. Good afternoon, Smriti, and good afternoon to everybody tuning in as well. You have the benchmark Nifty 50 that's trading with cuts of about 0.4% or thereabouts right now, 0.4% down, and not too far away from the low point of the day. It is trading above that 20,800 mark. And you have IT as a pack that's underperforming in a big way. So the Nifty IT, one of the worst performers in trade on a sectoral basis, and you have all of the constituents on the Nifty IT that is trading with cuts right now, but you have the large caps that are losing most of the ground. So you have TCS, you have Infosys that are on the top of your screen right now, which are losing over 2.5% each. It is not a very good day for the IT index as a whole. In terms of the other sectors, you have the Nifty Bank Index that is not doing too much in trade. It's just about flat at this juncture, and it has recovered quite a bit of ground in the last 1 hour or so. And the PSU Banking Index is also trading flat. Remember, this is a pack that has been in focus and has been buzzing in the recent past. Apart from the IT index, you have oil and gas, you have consumer durables, and you have metal that are all underperforming in trade. On the other end of the spectrum, you have media as a pack that is doing well, up about 0.6%. You have realty that's up about 1/3%, and pharma that's also up about 1/3%. In terms of a few stocks that I'm looking at very closely today, you have Tanla Platforms that is doing incredibly well in trade. No real trigger that we can speak of, but it's up over 19% at this juncture. If we can pull up that chart, then that is, there you go. So quite a lot of strength visible on Tanla Platforms. IREDA has been on a tear. It is up close to 10% in trade today. It is at the upper circuit and only buyers for this stock. And in fact, some of that buying interest is spilling over into the other power finance companies as well. So Power Finance Corporation of India up as much as 5.5% or 5.8%. And you have REC that's also up about 6.5% or thereabouts. Nazara Tech also doing well in trade. Among the losers, you have Suntech Realty that's not doing too well, a large trade in this particular counter that is now trading with cuts of about 4.8% and off the low point of the day.
Right. Alex, bringing back the focus on banks, while the index is trading flat today, a slew of banks are in the spotlight on the back of fundraising. Mika joins us with the latest. Mika, how big is this Indian Bank's fundraise?
Yes, so Indian Bank has launched a 4,000 crore QIP at a floor price of 414.44 rupees per share, and which is at a 5.3% discount to the previous close, and the company might also offer a 5% discount to the floor price. Now, this also comes after the Bank of India launched a 4,500 crore QIP a few days back, and Jammu and Kashmir's 750 crore QIP yesterday. Then we have an Axis Bank where reports suggest that Bain Capital is to divest a minority stake. Now, it's 3.34 crore shares, which is around 1.1% stake that is set to be, going to be sold at a floor price of 1,109 rupees per share. At this price, the deal is worth around 3,700 crores. Now, if the deal comes through, it would mark the second time that the private equity firm has divested a stake, in Axis Bank. In June, Bain Capital successfully offloaded around 0.7% stake in Axis Bank at an average price of 968 rupees per share, bringing the deal size to 2,178 crores. And before this, the firm also divested 1.2% stake back in October 2022. And lastly, we have a Bank of Baroda, where the capital raising committee is to meet on December 15 to finalize the quantum of the first tranche of their Tier 2 or sub-debt instrument issue, which the board has approved in the capital raising plan.
All right, thanks so much, Meka, for bringing us those details. Bank of Baroda trading with gains of about 1% or so in trade, whereas Axis Bank trading with cuts down about 1% or thereabouts. Now, all eyes are going to be on the decision of the FOMC, which has been meeting, as you know. That outcome is going to be known to us later today, and it's widely expected to be a pause. But the market and global markets and market watchers are already looking forward into 2024 to try and figure out whether or not there are going to be cuts. As things stand, the inflation print that came out yesterday was supportive of that idea or that expectation, but the US economy has been more resilient than expected. We spoke to Mayuresh Joshi of William O'Neill earlier today about how he expects a turn in the interest rate cycle in the US to affect our markets. Listen in.
I think that is one deciding factor which will decide how long this bull market will continue for. But largely, I think the space that India is at this juncture, largely the expectations of a rate cut in the second half of the next calendar year is largely penciled in. Now, to answer your question, if that probably gets delayed,
that's our rate cuts.
The Fed rate cut.
Fed rate cut.
And we will follow suit as the Fed starts cutting. But to that extent, a large part of that has got priced in. Now, the upside risks, because we do keep an eye out for the risk factors in the market as well. The upside risk will be if this continues for a longer period of time than expected. Maybe the markets over the next quarter will start feeling that part of the heat. And what is happening with the banks? Because a large part of the US regional banks are feeling the heat as far as the M2M bond losses are concerned. What's happening in China, if there is a significant hit on the bond portfolios as far as banks is concerned, maybe that has to be taken as a write-off for most bank balance sheets. And therefore, that is one risk factor that we're probably watching out for, which can have a sort of a global effect, and our markets will also get affected by that. Are we overly perturbed at this point of time? Not really. I think we are waiting for a correction. The unfortunate part is when the correction comes, very few people jump in. So,
very few people have the money.
So I think retail investors have relatively become far more smarter, Tamanna, over the last couple of years as we've seen. SIPs have continued. A fall in the market would be a welcome sign because that will give better entry points for most sectors, most stocks. But structurally, I think a large downside risk for the markets, irrespective of what the Fed does or not, is relatively covered by the markets.
That was Mayuresh Joshi of William O'Neill, and he feels that there's a correction coming up in the Indian markets. However, we also spoke to Vikas Khemani of Carnelian Capital Advisors, who feels that the markets are fairly priced, especially considering the potential of the Indian growth story. Here's what he had to say.
I'm quite positive on markets, frankly speaking. I don't subscribe to the camp that markets are expensive. I think, given the India story, given the potential growth, markets are not at all expensive. They are in a fair value range. They are not cheap, but I don't think they are expensive either. And I always believe the valuation is a function of three things: ROE, earnings growth, and discounting factor. If you see, India's ROE is one of the best compared to any other market or its historical time. Our earnings growth are 15 to 18% sustainable for quite some time. At least next 3 to 5 years, it looks like that. And thirdly, discounting factor, which in turn is a function of risk-free rate and risk premium. And if you look at both, risk-free rate is probably lowest ever given the difference between US and India 10-year paper, and our risk premiums are coming down with whatever comfort around Indian story is there. So here is a very interesting trivia. We all understand in case of a fixed income that if a 10-year paper with 6 duration, a 2% drop in the interest rates makes the fixed income paper appreciate by 12%. A 2% drop in the interest rates with a 6 duration paper, paper will appreciate by 12%. But it's not that intuitive to understand in case of equities. So a 2% drop in the discounting factor, the DCF value, everything else remaining same, changes by 35%.
Wow.
So if let's say, I mean, there are nuances to it, but I'm just giving a broader range. So if earlier 20p was fine, with a 2% drop in the interest rate, your 27p also becomes fine. I'm just giving you this context. So I do believe that we are not expensive. I think, of course, markets will be subject to sort of volatility, intermittent corrections, but I don't subscribe to the camp that, in fact, if markets were to trade cheaper with this kind of setup, I would be really worried about the hypothesis.
I mean, emerging markets are trading at a 50-year high valuation. So that, of course, is something that we can talk about in detail. But yeah, we look well structured in place for now.
Yes.
What about, the big sort of X question, or the joker in the pack, in the sense? So everything else is aligning, crude is benign, treasury is fine, US recession seems like yesterday's headline, and political stability is there. But we don't know what the Fed's going to do. We don't know whether interest rate cuts are going to begin. How big a factor is that in this horizon that you have painted for us? Very positive picture you've painted for us. What is the capability of this one factor to spoil that party?
So I think one thing, Tamanna, is very clear, that interest rates have peaked out in US. I don't think there's a further scope of going up. You might argue, I mean, the question to ask is when they will come down. I don't know. It can be 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. But they are definitely coming down in that time frame, right? So I think worst is behind us. If, let's say, they come down in 6 months, or they start coming down in 6 months, then we will have probably a lot of flows coming earlier. If they come down in 12 months, slightly later, but doesn't matter. The point is that, whatever $45 billion of outflow we had over last 2-3 years, because Fed started raising interest rates, all and more will come to India the moment that reversal happens. And that period is anywhere between next 12 to 24 months. I don't know the precise time.
Yeah. But the question is that, and I'm saying this from the point of view of a large number of retail investors who have just come in, and not just the mutual fund pack, who are coming in, looking at the markets right now, seeing maybe some of the investments running up, wanting to put more money and wondering what to do. Do they have to wait for a correction, for a crack? Is that round the corner as an opportunity to come in? Just, if someone just came up to you and said, Vikas bhai, abhi kya karna hai? What would you say?
I will say deploy, invest, because unless your time horizon is 6 months, I don't know that. Because 5-10% correction can come into market at any point in time. Nobody can tell you when, how. You run the same risk when the index is 18,000, 15,000, 21,000, right? So that you can't. But if your horizon is 5 or 10 years, I don't think one should worry. There's a very nice saying by Peter Lynch that more money is lost on waiting for correction than actual correction. A lot of people miss out on waiting for correction. When you have this kind of setup, like you said, everything seems to be working well.
Yeah.
I don't think at least next 3 to 5 years perspective, I think India, or forget that. In fact, even from longer term perspective, I think next 10-20 years are very well planned for very well disposed for India. And India is one of the best market globally. So if you are living fortunately in that era, in this market, all you have to do is just keep allocating whatever capital, towards equities and asset class. And we are still, as a society, significantly underinvested. Funny part is that we all make statements, so much money is coming. But I'm saying still we are significantly underinvested as a society, in compared to our overall household savings. So long way to go. I don't think we should, every time things start working out, we start getting worried. What can go wrong? I think we can just enjoy the journey.
All right, on that note, let's slip into a very quick break. We've got more on the other side, so do stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching Market IQ on NDTV Profit. Now, while the markets look a little weak today, Morgan Stanley is very bullish on India. The firm expects political continuity in 2024 general elections. They have also projected a 14% upside to the Sensex. My colleague Neeraj Shah brings us all the details about what Morgan Stanley had to say in its latest report.
You have to argue that Ridham Desai and team got it right when they turned constructive about few months back, and that has paid off well. Now they've come out with an Outlook 2024 report, and it's interesting, a few takeaways. He starts off by saying that it's hard to argue against India's investment case. That's the key point. Even if you wish to, you cannot make an argument against India investment case. And the strong earnings, macro stability, and domestic flows. You know, it's amazing that every note now talks about how domestic flows are a key pillar which will aid the market momentum almost every single year, and Morgan Stanley is no different there. Now, what are the key takeaways for 2024? According to them, the long-term story is gaining strength, and India is the key pick in the EM and the Asia-Pacific basket. It's a base case looks for improving absolute returns and outperformance to the emerging market pack. And they say general elections, amongst other events, point to a bit of higher volatility when it comes to India. So that is probably the one thing, that volatility may be higher, but otherwise things look promising. Now the base case for markets, they say they expect equities to rise in 2024 general elections as the market, in the lead up to the general elections, as the market is likely to price in continuity and a majority government. They believe there is a 14% upside to the BSE Sensex up to December 2024 as the base case. Now, you remember, viewers, yesterday we had BOFA come in and talk about how the risk reward is skewed in favor of gains, and they believe there's a 15% upside. So there's a bit of a consensus out here from large global brokerages about what the Nifty could do in 2024. The thing is, everybody seems to be biased towards large caps as opposed to mid caps. So when it comes to Morgan Stanley, they are saying they prefer cyclicals over defensives. So you would see a bunch of those LNTs. I don't know if metals come into play here, but largely people stay away from metals because they are globally exposed. But local domestic cyclicals and cap goods come into play out there. Real estate comes into play. So that's the set of stocks that people are preferring as opposed to defensives. Read staples, and large caps over the SMIDs is what Morgan Stanley is saying, and this shouldn't surprise anybody as well, which is why in fact we've such a sharp focus on the SMID show. And lastly, they are overweight financials, consumer discretionary, industrials and technology. They say they are underweight every other sector. Just before I wrap up this piece, the other interesting thing that they are saying, that the key drivers for a structural bull market for India include macro stability, secular positive BOP. So that is part one. And a lot of people are penciling their focus on the balance of payment situation improving in India. Secondly, they say that strong relative and absolute growth for India. So not just in absolute terms, but even in relative terms, it is so much better than any of the other economies, large economies, which may be growing. Reliable domestic sources of capital. India's 401k moment. So everybody's talking about that as the third piece. And two more drivers that people talk about: social equity, and lastly, consumption boom. We haven't quite seen the consumption boom come into play as yet, at least at the rural side. Maybe that comes to the fore in 2024. So that'll be interesting to see. But net, much like BOFA Securities, Morgan Stanley too constructive with about a 15% at the start of the year. And by the way, 15% on large caps is not a bad play if we believe that the markets, that will keep the market steady, and then therefore individual stock specific stories will keep on buzzing.
All right, a 15% upside on the benchmark, and that's over and above the 14.5% year-to-date gains for the benchmark index. And remember that the mid-cap index at this juncture, I'm talking about the mid-cap 150, is up close to 40%. The small-cap index is up over 40%. It's been a fantastic 2023. Let's talk about or companies that are hitting the block right now. We've got DOM's IPO that has been oversubscribed on day one. The stationery maker is subscribed by 1.9 times. The company is raising 280 crore rupees for its expansion plans. My colleague Sajid Pangat spoke to the management of the company and asked them how their newest project could add to the revenue. Listen in.
we were able to acquire 44 acre of land in Umargaon, where our existing factories are based, and we would want to spend the IPO proceeds of 280 crore for the expansion of our new facilities upcoming on 44 acre of land, and 70 crore will be as a GCP from the proceeds.
Rahul, by when do you see this entire capex to be completed, and when do you see revenue flow coming through once this capex is completed?
So, sir, as things are planned right now, we've received initial approvals from the regulatory authorities. We expect to start construction in this on this project from January 2024. This project would be completed by March 26, and FY 26-27 would be the year when we'll start seeing revenues coming from this project.
That was the management of DOMS. But shifting focus to Hyundai initiative as part of Samarth by Hyundai in partnership.
In fact, we've got breaking news that we are just about hearing, and in fact, we've got security breach that has been reported at the Parliament. You are seeing some of those news updates at the bottom of your screen. And in fact, the latest that we've heard is that Lok Sabha has been adjourned on account of what is being thought of as a security breach. The latest that we know, of course, is that a visitor has jumped into the Lok Sabha chamber from the gallery. This is, of course, in the new Parliament building. A visitor was seen jumping over benches in Parliament. That's the latest that we have at this juncture. We know right now that Lok Sabha has been adjourned. We will bring you more details as and when we get them. Smriti?
Yes, shifting focus back to the Samarth initiative by Hyundai. This is in partnership with NDTV, and we take a look into the journey of a 23-year-old Pranav Bakshi. He's India's first model who has autism, and he highlights the complexities, limitations and difficulties associated with the autism spectrum disorder.
Autism is not a disease, it's a condition. Autism is my superpower. I don't suffer from autism.
23-year-old Pranav Bakshi is working with Thomson Reuters and loves anything to do with lights, camera and action. He became India's first model with autism after he walked the ramp for Lakme Fashion Week.
I like to pose in front of the camera, and I do poses and expressions in front of the mirror, and I like to walk the ramp because it makes me feel good, and I don't get nervous at all.
But being in crowded spaces has not been easy for Pranav.
I don't like crowds in concerts, malls, railway stations and airports, and I handle the situation to ignore the crowd.
Pranav dreams of shifting to Mumbai, and his mother Anupama has found her own process of learning and unlearning what works for Pranav.
I only followed Pranav, so I just tried to understand his challenges. Very happy, bright kid all over the place. He's kind, he's an empath. I see all kinds of things, long journey. But of course, there is autism behind all this. And his autism manifests in his obsessions and his anxieties, of course. So we have coping mechanisms in place. He had such poor coordination issues back then. Look at him doing deadlifts. Fitness is religion for him.
When you talk about autism, the brains of autistic people are wired differently from the non-autistic people, right? So as a result, they perceive the environment differently. So what happens as a result is the way they communicate or understand communication is different from the non-autistic.
According to a report by ET Health World, about 18 million people in India are diagnosed with autism. It is important to understand that autism is a spectrum disorder.
When you talk about the spectrum, the bottom line is, just like in the general population, there are people with variations in intelligence. There is the same kind of variation in intelligence amongst autistic people. So the way we try and look at it is how independently can a person is able to function. So we look at that. Somebody who is very independent, and you have people at the other end who would require a lot of support with all their day-to-day activities and everything in between. So people are across that entire spectrum.
What can be an inclusive environment for individuals, keeping in mind different kinds of disabilities?
Making environments inclusive for autistic people is trying to understand their experiences. So there are simple things like sometimes giving them a little time to process information because they're dealing with a lot of sensory overload all the time. You have to give them that time.
It is critical to create inclusive spaces, as inclusive public spaces are fundamental to participation and inclusion in society.
All right, now we're getting more information as we speak from Parliament, and we hear now that members of Parliament have run out of the Lok Sabha after what has seemingly been a security breach. MPs who spoke to reporters outside of Parliament said that they saw two men barging into Parliament with canisters in their hands, and they have said that the canisters were giving off yellow smoke. There is a paucity of information as things stand, but do remember that today is the anniversary, or rather the day on which 22 years ago there was an attack on Parliament. It is in fact a significant event in modern Indian history. We are in fact waiting for more details as we speak, but clearly that has caused members of Parliament to exit the House. There has been an evacuation. Lok Sabha has been adjourned. There are two individuals, we believe, who have caused that security breach, and we are waiting for more details. Tamanna is joining in to discuss this a little more. Tamanna?
You know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to request the cameraman to just zoom into this picture I have on my phone. Just before we get that visual cut up, if you can just zoom in and just give a sense of this picture, because this is clearly unequivocally, it's very clear that this is tear gas which has been put out in Parliament, if you can see it. And just you can come in closer and see it. You have to understand the scale of this as a breach, which is very, very serious. This is an extremely guarded space. It's very difficult to get entry into it. I'm so sorry, it's gone on screen lock, but let me just bring it back, and then hopefully we can cut that picture very quickly and put it on air. But just to give you a sense, and maybe zoom in a little more and look at what it is. So
there you go.
It's very clearly that a tear gas canister has been deployed. I don't know if it's one or two. The reports, and I saw that on NDTV as well, says that two people were there. I saw that video, and we'll try and play that loop for you, which says there was someone jumping over, and I could see someone jumping over the seats after deploying the tear gas in Parliament. So a massive breach. What is the extent of the breach? We'll have to see. If anyone has been hurt, we'll have to see. But immediately, the Speaker immediately adjourned the House, which was quick thinking. All of the members have been evacuated, as Alex said, and more details are averted. But a huge development taking place right in the middle of the day.
In fact, we are trying to get more information from reporters on the ground. This is what we have at the moment, and if we can possibly pull up that image that Tamanna was just showcasing on her phone, this is, of course, as you might imagine, developing information that we are bringing to you. We're still waiting for more details to emerge from this, but this is in fact a significant breach. We have Tamanna's got more details on the phone. In fact, this is the video that we're talking about. In fact, Parliament was in session. This appears to be the Rajya Sabha. No, it is the Lok Sabha, in fact.
Right. It is the Lok Sabha. It's a short clip right from Sansad TV, and we're going to try and cut it. But, I just want to give a sense of what has been happening. So there is a member standing up and speaking.
Yes.
And then suddenly there's chaos and ruckus, right? Everyone is looking around and wondering what's happened. That white shot was caught on TV, and you can see an individual in a blue shirt jumping on all of those benches. And immediately it gets adjourned because the Speaker says, House adjourned. So that's the extent of footage we have right now, and I hope that just gives some idea of what has happened. Hopefully it's not more serious than tear gas putting out. Hopefully no one is hurt at all. But the fact that someone could get in with tear gas and deploy it in Parliament while in session, the winter session is on right now, is a very, very big matter.
And this is at the new Parliament building as well, right?
Yes, yes.
So, and it draws attention to the fact that I think to a certain extent the security at the Parliament, we'll have to try and understand where the ingress took place of these individuals who obviously, not part of the administration or the staff there, at least as things stand and what we know for now. We are waiting for more details on this particular incident. We've told you what we know. The police apparently have detained those two individuals, and so we will probably hear more. We are trying for a little bit of information. Smriti, do you have more?
Yes, so we have got a little bit more information. So the two protesters were a male and a female that have been detained by the local police, as you mentioned, in front of the Transport Bhavan, where they were protesting with color smoke. And we also have the names of these two. We have one is Neelam and one is Anmol Shinde. They're both, Neelam is around the age of 42 and Anmol is a young man, 25 years old. The incident happened just outside the Parliament, in front of the Transport Bhavan, which is the running road in front of the Parliament. So that's all we have.
I believe we have Karthik Chidambaram joining in. Mr. Chidambaram, if you can take us through what you know of the incident right now.
I was in the house. The house was 0 hour was happening. I was awaiting my turn to speak. Suddenly, I noticed a sound from the visitors gallery. Initially, my reaction was I assumed that it was maybe an accident. He tipped over and fell down. But then I realized jump and another. He was the first person tried running towards the speaker's chair. Mr. Rajendra Agrawal was in the chair. Many members overpowered him, but he pulled out a canister which was started emitting a yellow. The second person also jumped down and opened out a canister which is emitting an yellow fumes. These fumes could have been very lethal. Thank God it was only a fume. It could have been toxic. Serious security breach. I'm surprised how the two people who come into the visitors gallery, especially when you come to the visitors gallery, you need an entry to go past. Plus, you need to give your ID. Yeah. You go through multiple scanners before coming in. If they're able to bring in canisters, and if they brought in a lethal toxic agent into the house, there were more than 100 members in the house, and it could have been a very, very
Mr. Chidambaram, can you confirm that all members of Parliament have left the house and there was no injury?
No, none of the members were injured, but many of us inhaled the fumes. I mean, all of us were in the house. I mean, I was there. We inhaled. None of us are injured, but we inhaled the fumes. Right. The fumes could have been toxic. I'm not saying it's toxic because obviously I'm still speaking to you. But if it had been toxic, the consequences would have been very fatal. There were more than 100 members inside the house. And today is the anniversary of the Parliament attack. On this day, people are able to come in, smuggle these canisters into the house, and these canisters could have carried any agent. Maybe it was an inert agent today, but what if it was not an inert agent and it was toxic and it was lethal? That is the point. And there were more than 100 members in the house at this time.
Yeah. Karthi, this is Tamanna here, and Karthi Chidambaram, of course, a Lok Sabha member. First of all, hope you're safe. Thank God this wasn't
I'm fine.
worse.
I'm fine. We inhaled the gas. I feel fine. But what if the gas was poisonous?
No, absolutely. And I'm sure this must have taken everyone by surprise. Now you say that these
completely. It was 0 hour was going, and everybody was getting their turn to speak, and I was awaiting my turn to speak on the 0 hour.
Okay. Any idea right now who these people might be, why they have done this, anything they said over there?
I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea. Really, it's up to the speaker to put there is a big security protocol in the house. And I'm just surprised that this protocol did not work. Even the response time of the security was very, very slow. It was actually the members who overpowered this intruder. It was not the security response has to be reviewed all over again. I found the security response to be very, very sloppy, and there are marshals even in the galleries. And if somebody can, with marshals being in the galleries, in spite of that, somebody could jump. I'm very, very concerned about.
Yeah, so you're saying they deployed these canisters and they pulled out these canisters after they intruded and got in? All right, we seem to have lost the line there, but Member of Parliament of Lok Sabha, Karti Chidambaram, they're describing the whole situation, and it's very concerning because it was 0 hour, they were waiting to speak, and these people suddenly come in and they start spraying.
And no, in fact, what he was saying and what I got from this, and we'll have to confirm this perhaps, this is what I'm taking while I'm speaking to him, is that the members of Parliament, in fact, intervened and tackled the individuals that came in, and after which these canisters were deployed. And he pointed out, Mr. Chidambaram, that certain amount of smoke was inhaled, and thank goodness that they are okay.
No, there'll definitely be a very, very detailed investigation, including saying, like as you mentioned, Alex, this is on the anniversary of the Parliament attack. So is there a link? Who were these people? What were they trying to do? How did they get in? And, you know, obviously the good part is that they have already been apprehended. But at that point, these are representatives of the people of this country.
Yes.
So it has to be seen in that light. An attack on the Parliament is an attack on India.
On the people of India,
and the representatives of this country. So it will be seen with that seriousness at this point, and we'll try and speak with more members of Parliament. The good thing is that most of them seem to be safe. Karti Chidambaram confirmed that nobody is injured as far as he can see. But how did the breach happen? Because this is clearly it is a very tedious process, you know, to even go, and even journalists who cover Parliament are issued a separate pass. They go through the security check. Even the visitors gallery is not something that you can just saunter into.
In fact, if he's, and of course he's also somebody who has seen this happen in front of him, but he did say that the entry took place from the visitors gallery that you just mentioned. And so there is clearly a security breach that allowed these people who were apparently protesting just outside to enter.
Oh, is it? So now what were they protesting? Was this a form of protest? Anyway, that will be irrelevant because you can't do that in Parliament.
Yes, certainly. So what Smriti was just pointing out, and this is from NDTV, I will reiterate this for the benefit of those who are joining in. 2 protesters, apparently a male and a female, have been detained by the local police in front of Transport Bhavan, who are protesting with coloured smoke. Neelam Kaur Singh and Amol Shinde have been, whether or not these are the same individuals is yet to be confirmed. This is what we've heard. But what we know at this juncture is that 2 individuals broke into Parliament while it was in session. 0 hour was going on. There were members that were waiting to speak. Karti Chidambaram, who spoke to us a short while back, was one of those individuals. There was a breach, therefore, of security. Members of Parliament intervened to try and prevent these individuals from making further progress, and at which point there was a deploying of smoke canisters. Some of that smoke was inhaled by members of Parliament, and Karti Chidambaram was one of those individuals that inhaled that smoke. He has said that he is, as of now, feeling okay, and I'm pretty sure that they will be receiving medical treatment as we speak, or at least there will be medical professionals on hand to give them any help or assistance that they require. But those are the images that are playing on screen right now. In fact,
just one thing. There's just one thing, Alex, while I'm seeing those pictures. Our members of Parliament, and they get a lot of flack. Netas get a lot of flack in this country. But when this intruder came in, they are rushing towards them to apprehend them. They're not running away. They're rushing towards them to apprehend them. Look at those pictures. And they're just leaping over these seats. The security breach will go into, it's the anniversary of the Parliament attacks. Is it connected or not? It's just astonishing that this can still happen in 2023. The fact is that they came, they ran towards them, and they're apprehending them. They're making sure that whoever it is brought to book.
And certainly, and I think, like you said right at the start, perhaps a few of our viewers tuning in right now, and what you said at the start, I think, made a lot of sense, Tamanna, which is that this was very quick thinking on the part of the Speaker as well, to adjourn the House. And of course, there was an exit made by all of the members of Parliament, at which point I'm assuming that security personnel were deployed, and these 2 individuals have been apprehended. We are still awaiting more clarity. And as we speak to you, we are trying to speak to members of parliament to try and find out what is happening on the ground. And I'm sure our reporters will also come into play in the coming minutes and hours of the day to bring you the latest of what is happening. As things stand, though, what we have been told by Karti Chidambaram is that nobody has been injured, and hopefully the smoke canisters that were deployed are definitely they're non-lethal, but they will not have had any impact on the health of our parliamentarians. Tamanna.
All right, so it's a story we'll continue to track, and we'll come back with it when we have more information coming in. But suffice to say, it's an attack that was thwarted. At least that we can say. Yes, tear gas did go off.
Or some form of smoke.
Some form of smoke. It could have been something really dangerous, yes, frankly. Yeah. But nothing worse was allowed to happen. Certainly. We've got the perpetrators. We'll figure out what's happened sooner than later.
And I think, it's important to note that in the back of the minds of our parliamentarians, there would also be this knowledge that today is the day 22 years back when there was a very serious attack on Parliament. And it takes a certain amount of courage to move towards individuals that are unknown.
They didn't think about it. Look at the visuals. They're running towards them.
They are running towards the individuals that made an unlawful ingress into the House of Parliament and at least tried to apprehend them before anything was done. So that speaks to the courage of our members of Parliament as well. We are still trying to identify more details and bring them to you. And in fact, if you are tuning in for the first time, we must tell you that 2 individuals have breached the House while it was in session. This was 0 hour, and we spoke to Karti Chidambaram earlier in the afternoon, and he said that they were waiting, in fact, for question hour. Okay, I believe that we have an NDTV correspondent that is speaking to Karti Chidambaram right now. Can we go across? Can I confirm that we can go across to them? All right, let's go across to them. All right, I believe that we have Mr. Karti Chidambaram, our correspondent on the ground, is with him, but we're just trying to bring you those. All right, listen in.
What did you see in the House? What happened? The 0 hour was happening. I was awaiting my turn to speak. Suddenly, one person jumped from the visitors gallery. Initially, it appeared as if he had, just leaned over and fallen down. That is what my initial reaction was. But then he was followed by another person also jumping. Then I realized that it was a deliberate act. And one person started running towards the speaker's chair, and he took out his shoe. He was overpowered by certain members, but he had a canister in his hand which had opened. The other person jumped down and also opened a canister, and both the canisters emitted a yellow smoke. We do not know what the composition of the yellow smoke was. It could have easily been toxic. It could have been poisonous. It could have been a smoke bomb, or it could have been a tear gas. It could have been anything. So this is a serious breach of security, and especially it's happening on the 13th of December, the anniversary of the Parliament attack. We should not forget that. And it's surprising that the 2 people were able to bring canisters into the visitors gallery of the Parliament, because the Parliament, to come into the Parliament gallery, you need the signature of a particular MP, and you also need their ID. So it's not as if unknown people can come there. In spite of this, and there is a strict screening before people come there. They're not even allowed to bring their mobile phones. It's very surprising how they have brought in 2 canisters. It's a serious security breach, and the Speaker, who is the custodian of the House, must constitute an immediate inquiry, apprehend all those people who were involved in it, and see where the breaches were. So what has happened now to these? Have they been arrested? They were obviously overpowered and taken. They were obviously overpowered and taken into custody, but I do not know what happens. You must ask the Speaker, because he is the custodian of the House. But the fact that 2 people could come into the visitors gallery and carry canisters which can emit smoke, this smoke could have been anything. These fumes could have been poisonous. I'm not saying they are poisonous. They could have had the potential of being poisonous. If they had been poisonous, the fallout would have been terrible. The House was with many members. This would have had especially happening on the 13th of December, is sending out a very bad signal, and it is also sending a signal that our security is not tight.
All right, that was Member of Parliament Karti Chidambaram speaking about what occurred just a short while back. In fact, latest information that has come in, this is 2 These are two different groups that were involved in this, one from inside the parliament and one outside. In fact, the individuals that we told you were apprehended and we named were apparently protesting outside of the house, and they have been apprehended by the Delhi police. Those inside have been detained by parliamentary security personnel, and that's as per the initial reports that we've gotten. We will, of course, stay with this story and we'll bring you more details as we get them. For now, we are drawing this show to a close. Thanks so much for watching. This is NDTV Profit.